CIO, Pete, the CTO. We have the chief architect who I just met here, chief privacy officer. So we got it's pretty cool to have all these leaders from the organization. And Pete's been a few years since we've had him, so we're happy to have you back. He'll be giving a talk on building a collaborative synergy between the DOE mission and technology. It's a recurring theme that comes up a lot, but I think the Department of Energy has done a wonderful job at aligning what they're doing in their IT investments with supporting the business mission, and Pete's going to share some thoughts on that. Pete?
Thanks a lot, Parham. I'm definitely glad to be here, and it's going to be hopefully a little different type of message. I'm going to talk a little bit technology, but what you'll hear and see, hopefully, is sort of what it is that I do at the department across federal government, working with industry, because the CTO role at the department has evolved. 2 years ago, when I was appointed to that role, I was feeling as though I was already doing that type of job in terms of getting used to the landscape at the Department of Energy, which is extremely vast, extremely disparate, not much unlike a lot of our large cabinet-level agencies. But the work in and of itself takes a lot of knocking on doors, picking up the phone, and engaging in conversation. So the title is going to be rooted, or should I say the message is rooted in collaboration. And I don't mean in the open government sense only of being transparent and getting to know people, but what's the output or the outcome from that type of collaborative engagement and so forth. I hope you enjoy it. It's not going to be death by PowerPoint. I'm using this new tool that we're using called Prezi. And if I can just click there, there'll be some pretty interesting graphics. The lighting I don't think is too great, but this is my first attempt at what is called a mind map. Didn't know what one was about a year ago. The reason I want to kind of give a picture to what it is, or a picture, as they say, is worth 1,000 words, is I do have my hands in a lot of things in government. I've been in 22 years. And when I talk about a technology or a mandate, and I've been blessed to have the opportunity to lead some task forces in government, dating back to my days as a GS 13, 14, working with voice over IP in the late 90s, to some cloud computing, some IPv6 thrown in there, some mobility. The good and the bad of being a public speaker is you're talking about a lot of different things. And are you really a subject matter expert, or are you a jack of all trades and a master of none? Well, in my career, it's been really an important thing for me to do, and that's to link a lot of this technology. And in the last couple of years, in the role of CTO and being pulled out of the operational aspect of things, where I used to live in a data center back in my days at the Department of Education, where I came across that path where it was, do I want to go the technical route and live in a data center and work with routing and switching and infrastructure, which is where my bones and my genetic strain is really rooted in, which I enjoy. I love talking about and understanding the things behind the walls. But when you step out of that and you have to make that decision, do I want to be a CIO, a CTO, whatever it is, to be the messenger of information, having that experience has helped me, I believe, in terms of making a mark at energy and getting to know a lot about our mission. So this picture, which I will be zooming into some of this, if you can't see it, really typifies what it is I do. I focus on the mission at the department, and we've got a very unique mission, as you've heard from Bob and others and Travis. National nuclear security, safety, environmental science and innovation, energy programs, the big three. And then there's the staff offices, and you throw in an Energy Information Administration with all the market-moving data that they have. Then we've got our dotted line with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and the North American Energy Regulatory Commission. And then you've got the Power Marketing Administration. So to be able to canvas that type of geography and to work on projects which we'll discuss, like cloud strategies, mobile strategies, BYOD policies, I mean, you can't write 1 or 2 or 3 strategies to meet the masses because the mission is so unique. And so mission, corporate, and federal. There's a big part of understanding the mission. The national labs, for example, fall under that umbrella. The program offices, if you look at our org chart, there's about 30-plus boxes that are associated with or affiliated with those big 3 pillars, science, energy, and NNSA. The labs themselves are not married to one specific program, but they're not only sharing with the various mission or their outputs, or should I say their extensions of the mission, but they're also sharing with other federal agencies. So there's a lot of work to understand. When I say mission, that's what I'm talking about. Labs, program offices, staff offices, and the like. Corporately, we're dealing with M&Os. We're about 140,000 plus or minus strong, about 10 to 12 or 15,000, depending upon whatever the latest number is, of federal employees. So what does that tell you? We're a huge government-owned, contractor-operated environment. And there's rules and regs and mandates that apply or don't apply. And as I've learned at Energy, and I could say this, and maybe those of you who don't know much about the department, even if you're around DC, a lot of folks, when they ask me, so what's it like working at Energy? I say, well, it's been an interesting run for 4+ years. And I go, well, what do you know about Energy? And this is generally the response I get is, that's an interesting place. I don't really know how it operates or how to navigate myself around that place. I got to work with Anish Chopra for the year before he left on some data activities. And he was someone who said, hey, you're my extension in there because I can't navigate myself around that damn place. I don't know who to talk to or who's tied to what. And I said, not a problem, let me jump into that. And it was only then that I realized when you're having a conversation with ARPA-E, for example, and thinking and hearing what they're doing, not to say in a vacuum, but then how does that tie over to NNSA and science and the like? That's where this mind map of, wow, we have a pretty unique mission. And to some extent, it's been awfully exciting for me because I've been able to learn a lot more from that mission. And then on the federal side, that's what I've been living. I know how typically the federal sector and my work with OMB, my work with OSTP as of late, dabbling in the CISO community has really enabled my message or allowed me to create a message that resonates with the national labs and the program offices. So on the left-hand side here, I'm doing a lot of leading and initiating of efforts. I'm doing what I can to facilitate and support a mission. A lot of that's been built through a crowdsourcing activity that I started 2 years ago, just to engage with the stakeholder community, these labs. You'd be amazed that I tell the story that I simply asked and worked about 2 months to get Dr. Chu's office, the 7th floor, to issue a memo or an email in support of a crowdsourcing exercise, which asked one question, that how can IT better support your mission? It went out to everybody. It was about a month and a half long. It was when crowdsourcing was really the hot thing to do, to have the many-to-one conversation. And no doubt, we knew what it would reap. But it was $890 investment to have this dialogue. And what came from that, the output from it, we're going to talk about. So facilitating those types of dialogues are things I do on an everyday basis. From the advise and championing piece, championing is a big part of what I have to do. I have to know what's going on in terms of what is the CISO or the cyber community doing, and tying together that aspect of cyber innovation. And one of the things I'll address, and it's in one of these little bubbles, is this secure cyber transformation that Gil Vega, our Chief Information Security Officer, and I have teamed up to do, so that bringing a CTO and a CISO together, and I have a same type of Venn diagram with our CFO and one that I'm building with our CIO, much like what Travis spoke about earlier today. There's the people, process, and technology life cycle, or however you want to triangulate those. One is not more important than the other. And then hopefully when I'm done here in about 20 minutes, you'll understand that the people aspect, the human factor, the humanizing of IT is something that I take very seriously. And if that's what a skill set that I have to bring people together, then my mom was right. Getting a liberal arts degree from the Villanova University, not knowing what I do with it, has somehow worked out for me at the end of the day, because I do like working with people on a daily basis. So with that, I'm just going to emphasize again that from the standpoint of all of this dialogue and how do we push technology and deal with game-changing technology and push this envelope, it's this understanding of technology, right? Whether it's a mandate on IPv6, how does social networking play into our environment, how we're going to communicate and collaborate. Continuous monitoring ties itself now to not only the cloud computing discussion, but the big data discussion about where our assets are going to be. And the reason, again, for this mind mapping is, I'm sure everybody in this room deals with a lot of things technology related, but people, process, and technology, when you sit down at a whiteboard and start to draw, how is all this stuff connected? it's pretty amazing that it not only is, but then what's the messaging around that? So if you have 5-minute sound bites with a national lab director or a CIO in the Office of Science to say, hey, if you just give me 5 minutes, let me tell you how, what could be in it for you by just listening to me, and let me explain to you the benefits of a cloud-first policy, or why FIPS 140-2 is significant to not only you as an entity, but why the government's pushing a lot of this compliance. And that's a negative term around the confines of energy, is compliance, compliance. I've been in so many discussions with the national labs who, thankfully, I built up a cadre of support with by simply meeting for 2 hours, blue sky approaching solutions and learning. I don't mandate, I don't push, but I articulate what this OMB memo might mean in the arena of whether it's cloud, whether it's V6, whether it's PKI, you name it. It's not that the cloud, or not that those stakeholders don't understand why compliance is important, but the delivery of a message in the Department of Energy as to why a lab might want to take something serious, it's very delicate. And the technologies and the advancements in our national labs, the innovation, I got the greatest job in the world. If I want to know what's innovative and cool and actually mainstream, I go to the national labs. IPv6 mandate in 2005, we were running V6 on our networks in 1999. Innovation and mobility in the labs, I go to Sandia. Unified communications, I go to Livermore. Idaho National Lab, working with Idaho National Lab in the last few months. Groundbreaking stuff's going to be announced here soon in terms of their adoption of a federal cloud and how ITAR information, encrypted information, is going to be passed to and from data at rest, data in motion in the cloud. So it's easy pickings as long as that lab community is willing to understand what's in it for them and the value proposition and the opportunity to showcase their efforts. So this technology and understanding layer is something that is extremely important to me in how I deliver that message. And I want to make no mistake about the fact that I value my technology roots. The reason I like to establish a bit of credibility with the audience is a CTO, people associate T as technology. I associate it as thought leadership transformation as well as technology. And you could take the title away. I'm a people person, again, at the end of the day. And just having a healthy dialogue can open up huge opportunities because this whole connection of things that are present every single day. So briefly, technology summits. We had that crowdsourcing exercise. From that exercise, we had like the top 10 things that the Department of Energy is interested in or would like to see more of. You got things like, I want to bring my iPhone to work. We need to have better collaborative tool sets. I don't know what the heck's going on at the 7th floor. Where's Dr. Chu speaking next? What's the roadmap from the OCIO? Well, out of the blue, I said, hey, this shouldn't be too hard to put together a collaboration or a dialogue or a sort of a nexus where people could come together and have DOE people tell the DOE stories about what's being innovative, what's happening, and we've done that. We've had 5 what we call technology summits that not only showcase our national labs, but the program offices. We do these every 3 months, free of charge, industry's invited. I encourage people to come. It's not an AFCEA, it's not a GTRA, it's not something that is much more formal-like, but it's a conference, it's a coming together of people at the DOE auditorium downtown to hear about who's doing things such as these topics in the federal sector, in the Department of Energy. Big data is our next one for obvious reasons, but there's already a plethora of opportunities and use cases of how big data is being used in an innovative realm. And what's really easier than I thought would be the fact that when I look to do this and to market this, it's not easy. You got to get on the horn, you got to explain what is it you want me to do. The people in the national labs, the people in the program offices would love to come and tell their stories. And that entree of come to DC, tell us what you're doing in the spaces of cloud and collaboration, because there may be a trigger where you say something, you're working with a vendor that some other national lab or some other program office or heck, some other agency could leverage, and that's what's happening. That's the beauty. When I walk out of these, and I'm the MC for these, I kind of just make the dialogue, keep the dialogue moving. It's amazing that not only are business cards changing, but I get calls from a lot of these other venues now to say, hey, those 3 people that you had speak, or can I get the attendee list? I don't give it away like it's free of charge. I just say, well, what are you going to do with this? The content, the information, the connecting of those people, and the message that they had. It's amazing how it has just spawned opportunities to share services at the Department of Energy. And the term co-opetition, have you heard that? You can Google it. That's what the national labs. I thought the national labs were best buds and hung out and shared and swapped stories all the time. Well, that was my ignorance. The reality is they're in competition with each other, but what they're doing, and they're, again, funded to do things in ways where we offer up, and it's the phrase, we're going to tell them what we want done, but not necessarily how to do it, because that could stifle the innovation, and that gets into the whole commercialization and tech transfer piece, which is why when we had our summit on tech transfer, it just opened a lot of people's eyes to, that's a key mission of the department. What's the technology that we're using that's either prohibiting the technology to transfer outside the realm, to commercialize those products, to work with venture capitalists? What are the technologies we're using today? It all ties together. So there's a theme of connecting these summits, and again, that's just an example of the type of output that we're doing to collaborate. Secure transformation. Just last week, I was fortunate to brief the CISO Council, which was housed at the Department of Energy. I did a pitch hit for Gil Vega, who was in Chicago, our CISO. He's a strong advocate for the type of work that, call it the CTO effort that I have, and he and I have come together and said, this is something that we need to be doing together. It's one thing to say security's baked in, there's going to be a wrapper of cyber around it, but to have a discussion with those chief information security officers, the people that have all the money, at least where I work, and seem to have, like, not liberty, but they have a lot of, what's the term we use, discretionary dollars to do exciting, innovative, policy-driven pilots, proofs of concept. Well, I want to be working with those cats. And now Gil has helped fund a lot of the efforts that I'm doing. So partnering with it, fostering innovation to say, well, what are you doing that's so innovative that's not so compliance-driven? And we found out that there's just things he's not capable of doing because he's doing a lot of meeting the mail. So he and I are working together, along with my colleague Don Adcock, who has come over from the Department of Defense and is leading our information energy IT support services, and we've built a little bit of an innovation thing there. So we're going to be triangulating between having cyber, this outreach that I seem to bring to the table, and then the day-to-day operations. But doing technology assessments, prototypes, pilots, proofs of concept. I'm a pilot user doing stuff with VDI and MDM solutions, and this is my office. I mean, this is my workspace. I don't have a brick and mortar location downtown anymore. I have an office in Germantown I visit maybe 4 times a month, but for me to conduct and be able to do my job, I got to practice what I preach and live the dream, as they say. I have more meetings in coffee shops and around town because it's more convenient. It needs to be ready real time, and I don't just mean email and so forth. Video conferencing on the iPad, developing these types of, or tablet, these types of solutions. I don't have time to be in an office and to travel. To Travis's point, I'm working close to home or somewhere that I have an internet connection to do my job. So prototyping and proof of concepts are things that I think most agencies talk about having, but deploying those proofs of concept, deploying those pilots, they're an effort. They're easier said than done. So working with the cyber community in that realm just is a nice meshing of the two of us, and again, we're spreading that word throughout the federal government. Acquisition strategy management, that speaks to the, okay, we want to use technologies, we want to have mobile solutions, we want to get to the cloud, we want to acquire mobile tools and so forth. The chief acquisition community, our folks in the Department of Energy, and how we acquire these products is a whole nother mess. It could be a hairball and can stifle that innovation when you think you've got your idea down, how I want it, what I want to get, where I want to get it from. It can die on the vine if you run into a brick wall where the acquisition community doesn't understand the value in it, and that's back to the what's in it for me. So yet another stakeholder that is engaged in what we're doing. And then doing resource and cost analysis, significant. And this is the way we like to spread the message of where does this CTO and this CISO come together. I'm not just a thought leader, Gil's a thought leader. I'm clearly not the only one who can write a book on how to collaborate and engage our customers. Gil's doing that in his own community. He has his own versions of a summit and symposium, bringing these people together to tell the stories. Risk management, things that, this approach that Bob Rees talked about the other night that's sort of a groundswell in the federal government. It was born at the Department of Energy. It's having its effect. But how do you get out and talk about it? Well, you have to go and apply it to your mission. And when Gil's doing that on a regular basis, it's on me as a CTO to understand that CISO community and much more. And that's on me. That's where it gets back to how much time and effort am I going to be putting in so that if somebody's going to come or a vendor's going to come to me as a CTO and pitch a solution, I want to be able to know what triggers there are, whether I have Gil in the room or not. Again, speaking to the secure transformation, I got to know what to call out if I smell or think something doesn't sound right. And I expect every vendor or anyone from industry to come talk to me and speak to, here's the benefit that it will have to your CISO community, to your acquisition community. I tell that and say that all the time. If you're going to call on the Department of Energy for anything, if nothing else, hit those points. Here's what it matters to you as an ops person if you're talking to Don. If you're talking to me from a thought leadership, from a transformation, how can this have an impact across those various missions? Pete, take this message to the Office of Science, to the Office of Energy, to the Office of NNSA. You give me that message, I'm your guy. I can make that happen. But I don't want to be running around trying to find all those right answers, because if I do, it's going to be a much more to snail's pace. And each one of you who are industry in this room might get latched up with the wrong person. And that can, again, kill a potential wonderful opportunity because the collaboration isn't there. So, energy.data.gov, switching subjects. So I'm jumping in and out of things. My other world is how can data have this impact? There's this big push for open data, open innovation. The digital strategy talks about it. Please check out energy.data.gov. I happen to be a co-chair on this effort with my colleagues, Steve Young from EPA, Kathleen Turco from GSA. Big movement here on just the power of information and data sets, combining the federal data that's free with the entrepreneurial developer community that we know can do wonderful things with that data and then improve the lives of citizens. It sounds kind of hokey, but it's actually what's happening. That's why these challenges pop up. The our Apps for Energy program, if you go to energy.gov and see what that produced, 56 applications, $100,000 in prizes are sort of like the whoop-de-doo. You get some money for developing something, but at the end of the day, these developers build all these cool applications on free information, free data sets that are now machine readable and have APIs, in essence, that allow the development or developer community to do what it does. And this is just one of the communities out there. So I'm very baked in on the push for data and the value of data, and most importantly is we know how to secure the data. Green button, anybody familiar with green button? Is anybody here? There's like 10 hands. This is slick stuff. This is the push that Anish started, by way of the blue button and the health information arena. Green button's the next instantiation. There is a red button and I think a gold button that's coming down, but it has to do with exposing data so that we as consumers ultimately can make sense of our electricity usage. Take your bill, take your utility bill every month. I don't even know if you look at it anymore. I have just an automatic pay the damn thing. I just wish I knew what generation, transmission, and distribution ultimately means to me. Or should I know what it means to me, and how can it help me make decisions so that I can lower that cost every month? So that I can do something, whether it's buy the right appliance, conserve energy when I'm away. It's not just go buy a programmable thermostat. It's knowing what you're spending your money on in terms of that supply and demand in your home. So green button is that message, that venue that sort of seems to resonate with the general populace. But I'm actually working on this thing called Energy Powerball, which is one of 13 initiatives that just a month and a half ago, 40 of the top energy sector evangelists type visionaries got together and said, what can we do to spur the interest in electricity usage and how we can get folks to start thinking about saving money on electricity? Well, we're coming up with these 13 programs, this being one of them. And at the end of the day, it's kind of like there's going to be hopefully a competition if this is ultimately adopted, where our utilities, once they're buying into this, can say, hey, every month, not by adding anything or do anything different in your home, you can get maybe some readouts on, hey, I'm saving money each month. I'm doing something just a little bit different. And whether they're prizes or awards or rewards for that, that might spur folks to care a little bit more about not only what that bill means, what can I do differently in my home? Which outlets in my home are drawing more energy and why? Am I leaving appliances on? And there's just a lot of excitement around it. So green button and energy.data.gov are very tightly linked, but it also ties back to the open government theme of being transparent, participatory, and looking at data and making sense of the data. So very excited about that effort. The technology life cycle itself, I'm going to blow through this simply because the plan, secure, acquire, and manage. That to me is loosely used terminology when it comes to looking at how are we actually working today in today's infrastructure for those geeks in the room, and I mean that in a very positive way, propeller heads. My roots in infrastructure is all this great stuff about the potential of mobility, the potential of a wireless, workspace. Nothing happens unless the behind the walls are invested in the information and the equipment behind the walls. And this is where we're seeing this cloud computing merging with how is our infrastructure going to be defined, what data in the cloud are we ultimately going to manage and monitor, and how's that going to affect our internal working. So if this were simply a picture of today, the key takeaway here is you've got cloud providers and you've got internet and you've got some wireless access. Tomorrow's infrastructure, we're seeing that bringing the cloud in-house, managing our services outside of what we do, releasing some of that or relinquishing some of that control and wanting to be more mobile. So by bringing the cloud providers and the agency and maybe looking at, do I want to have more of a, to get a little bit technical, an Ethernet VPN versus something that's an MPLS infrastructure that a lot of us migrated to in the past. This trust issue of managing our own or outsourcing it is clearly where we are. Securing that infrastructure, what happens if something bad happens? It's securing our perimeters. We know that there's a number of vendors out there that can help us do that. The trusted internet connection, let's just say one thing, really bad thing happens. If you were to cut that off, we still need to do our functioning and our working within the parameters of our Department of Energy network, et cetera. So that securing infrastructure is another element that we're addressing when we're talking about pushing innovation. Acquiring it, we talked a bit about that. I still think there's a ton of questions out there is how do you acquire cloud? How do you know what you get, what you're paying for, buy the drink, and you're actually able to truly, what's the term, be elastic in the sense of bursting to that level if you need the information. So acquiring infrastructure and the acquisition community that, again, in my backyard, doesn't fully understand, and this is no knock on them, everything they need to know about how cloud computing or what it is or how it works, but they darn well better be the experts on we get what we pay for. Because that's when one of the promises of cloud computing is pay as you go. And then managing and using the infrastructure, this speaks to the process and the understanding and the people and the policies that have to be rewritten as a result of moving to a cloud infrastructure, a mobile infrastructure, a BYOD infrastructure. And that's the significance there. So that speaks, again, back to linking the stakeholders. Cloud strategy, I have to deliver a cloud strategy, a mobile strategy, and a BYOD policy by the end of September. Working with Travis and the Right Path effort, which, again, ties directly to that. You heard a lot about it if you didn't earlier today. You definitely want to get a copy of the presentation. But this is the opportunity that we at the Department of Energy are leveraging in terms of this is work that's been going on for almost a year now. But people who have thought through this cradle to grave, how to do it right, how to take together people, process, and technology to innovate, it will be part of a cloud strategy and a mobile strategy that I have to deliver for obvious reasons. It's going to be a true use case. There's pilots going on with these technologies today. So that's exciting stuff that's happening at the Department of Energy. And then, the mobile strategy in and of itself, we talked around BYOD here. I've been in a few sessions already. How do you develop that? Well, this is sort of my secret sauce of what I want to deliver as a CTO from a technical standpoint is this framework. And all you need to know about this is simply, and we talked about this morning with a small group of folks, is everybody in the Department of X would love to have a policy repository that's state-of-the-art, up-to-date, and is maintained. I could tell you that I bet you if we pulled every telework policy in government and looked at it after dealing with 30 voluminous pages of, at the end of the day, sign here on the dotted line, it probably doesn't say the same thing. It doesn't address really what is infrastructure and teleworking equipment. It isn't mainstream. It isn't kept up to speed and current. Well, that's just for teleworking. What about personal use? What about how do you write a BYOD policy at an agency like Energy where Travis, as a CTO, clearly has access or needs to data that are probably a lot different than I do. So that same policy can't apply to me. You got to look at the mission and the role that he plays in his office of NNSA versus maybe myself in the headquarters arena and be able to draft a policy. So I have this framework that will address kind of like a TurboTax for policy. We hope that will not only be something we can deliver in the terms of a prototype, but something that can help agencies ultimately build policies based on Q&A that say, what's your mission, what kind of access you need information to. I'm being very high level. But if we deliver that, it's something I want to package as part of, obviously, the Right Path effort and sell that to government, because policy is something people don't want to deal with. And I think in my world of government, growing up in ops, doing some collaborative efforts, When Travis asked me to lead the policy IPT team, and if that was going to be my only onboarding to follow this incredibly cool effort, I said, I'll take it. And what it is it's painstakingly tough to think about how do you do role-based user segmentation policy development, which is what it is. And that's something that, again, ties it all together. So inputs like mandates, policies, standards, regulations, what is that going to pump out at the end of the day? What's in the inside here is our policy owners, user roles, assets that you need information to. You can't draft a policy, which I'm sure everybody would agree, that meets the masses. Not the Department of Energy, for sure. Are we dealing with classified information? Are we dealing with unclassified information? Are we dealing with a cloud infrastructure that INL was looking at on the commercial side of Google, or the government cloud that Google has? Are we dealing with ITAR information, sensitive but unclassified or unclassified? There is not one policy that can be written for a cloud strategy in terms of, this can meet everybody's role and responsibility. So we're taking a lot of that, and we're having a lot of a discussion around it. Excuse me. And this, in summary, this is my attempt, if you were to take one slide away, what I'm really all about. I think that everything, and we could agree that everything's connected, but being able to connect the dots as a technologist, as a visionary, everybody has that in them. Everybody here can spell cloud computing, fundamentally knows how it works. But when I'm out there talking to my mission, and I'm collaborating, and I'm saying, would you at least be willing to partner with us or showcase what it is you're doing so we can leverage it, that ties it all together. People want to do business with us. It sounds crazy. We talked about co-opetition with the labs. Well, I could tell you in the Office of the CIO at Energy, we're selling services on a daily basis. We're asking science and NSA, and RightPath is really our excuse to have something with a little more push, money, a lot of money, and having an NSA sort of wanting to team with us to go push our products, our services, commodity IT goes a long way. If you don't build that relationship, and I can tell you being a Fed, it doesn't come easy, but for folks to see that value in wanting to partner and understand technology transfer, to take a mobile policy that was developed in Sandia and bring it to headquarters that ultimately could be shared across the enterprise, then given to GSA to push out to all the federal agencies and the Federal Acquisition Service, that's the linkage of thinking beyond your own mission and thinking how can we really improve government. And again, having been blessed to work with OMB and a lot of these task forces, you hear about the stories of, well, they're doing the same damn thing that we're doing and struggling with the same issues, and yet we all agree that from an infrastructure standpoint, we're using all the same equipment. Why are we off racing to be the first to market and say, I've got a BYOD policy, just sign here on the dotted line? That's the reality of the situation. Is agencies are more in the compliance mode of being rated and having a green, yellow, or red and saying, see, we're good, versus really truly embracing this transformation. And that's why, for me, if there was one tagline that I take with me each and every day is, there's an opportunity knocking every day at the department for me to go find something out. I met with these good folks here at my table who simply are saying, Pete, here's a product. And I'm like, well, who are you partnering with at Energy right now? I'll get a name, I'll get a contact. You're helping me go find those opportunities to bridge a dialogue with folks, to partner with folks, to ultimately say, hey, let's do something that's going to be not only good for the NNSA in the case of RightPath, but better for the Department of Energy, and that ultimately what's going to be best for government. Because then you're tying in open government, the theme of the use cases that you could back it up with, and hey, it's pretty exciting stuff when you're working at an agency like ours with all this opportunity of innovation or for innovation and use cases galore. It's just getting these people connected, and I'm finding, thanks again to this recent effort that really is one of the hats that I'm wearing in that mind map of mine, and that is dealing with policy across the Department of Energy is really what's bringing people together to say, you know what, I want to be a part of making that decision. So Denise Stevens, the INL CIO, who has an advisory role on the Lab Council, has offered to be the lead for the policy or the Cloud IPT, the Integrated Project Team. We've got Rich Robinson at the Livermore National Lab with the Livermore Valley Open Campus and the great work they're doing on unified comms. He's playing in this and wants to make and saying, Pete, you're on to something here, you and your team. I want to be a part of that. Jerry Johnson, I'm mentioning lab folks because these are the people that typically can say, not interested, leave us alone, don't tell us how to do anything. They're partnering with us. So that's it. That's it. I know I went over a little bit, Par, but I had a 5-minute delay. So, I mean, I figured I'd take my 30 minutes. That's the message, and I hope it resonates. Again, it wasn't too deep diving into technology, but please walk out of this wonderful 3-day event and say, at least Saronis was talking about something that matters. And I haven't coined it, but it's really that humanizing the relationship and how to build IT and innovate in your backyard. And to me, it all starts with a relationship with an individual or two. And from there, I think a lot of good things can come. So that's it. There's my information if you want to get in touch with me. Yeah, thanks, dude.
All right. With that, we have a 15-minute break. A couple of sessions coming up in here. It's developing a secure